So I was standing in line at the at Shaw's, waiting to purchase something, when I came across somebody who looked very familiar to me. So I walked over, asked, "Hey, haven't I seen you before?" And he says, "You might have. Not too many people know me, but to have somebody recognize me, that's actually a plus." And I said, "Really? Well, who are you then?" "Well, actually, wait. I've seen you before." And he says, "You established that. I'm Blinx." And I said, "Oh, Blinx, I remember you. You're from the old Xbox era." He says, "Yeah, that's correct." So, "What have you been up to for the past 7 or so years?" He responds, "Well, it's been a long story. Grab a chair or something. It's going to be a long one." So we sat on a local park bench, just after I purchased whatever I had, and then we just sat down, and he explained, being a time sweeper is very hard work. And after the first game, no one really remembered me. Well, there were people who did, but a lot of critics were rather unhappy with the difficulty. Then the sequel came out, and I'm not even a playable character, and that really upset me. Just be totally sidelined. It just really, really frustrated me. On top of that, I never understood the creativity. I never really understood why they would just sideline me altogether. And I said, "I can understand why that'd be a little frustrating for you." He says, "Indeed, it is frustrating." And I said, "Well, other than that, I mean, did you still get the satisfaction with the sales good?" He says, "They were better, but again, have you ever heard of a Blinx 3? No, they'll never make a Blinx 3, not even an HD remake." And I said, "Well, I'm sorry to hear that. So, have you been doing something productive with your life, then?" He responds, "Alright, so here's where things take off a little bit. Back in 2006, after people pretty much stopped playing me and just went off to playing Halo, the old hero instinct kicked in, and I went to a just walking down the street one day when I caught a glimpse of a burning building. Surprised, I had nothing really to do, so instead of calling the fire department, which I probably should have done in retrospect, I went in and I rescued everybody." I said, "Well, that was kind of you. I mean, being a hero and everything, people will sure to recognize that." And he says, "Luckily, one of the lives I saved was that of a high-ranking member of Nickelodeon." And I said, "Really, Nickelodeon, huh?" He says, "Yeah. As a reward, the guy offered me a job." And I said, "Well, did you accept it?" He says, "Oh, yeah, I accepted it." And then, what's cool is that somebody else from Nickelodeon, one of the, I guess it was called Gas or whatever, Game and Sports, something like that. He just gave me like a 2-second cameo in one of the commercials. That was the last the world ever saw of me. I said, "Well, that's okay. I mean, at least you ended on a high note." He says, "Or so I thought." Pretty much I just started working on some stuff, animated a little bit. I was basically one of the producers. I even co-directed a few episodes of Zoe 101. And I said, "Interesting." He said, "Yeah, they didn't really give me too much credit for that. The episodes weren't really all that popular." Although Victoria Justice was pretty popular in her day. Where is she now? And I said, "Well, have you heard of the show Victorious?" And he goes, "I think so, but that was probably after I quit." I said, "Well, you quit. I mean, what happened?" He says, "Well, just differences. People didn't really appreciate what I was doing. Maybe it was prejudice." And I said, "I'm sorry to hear that." And he says, "Well, I was able to continue my way. I got in contact with some of my old friends." I said, "Oh yeah, I remember them. Whatever happened to them?" He says, "Well, after Nekoji married Catherine, the two of them moved off somewhere tropical. Never really saw them again. Pelon, unfortunately, I'm sorry to say, but Pelon died of feline leukemia back in 2009. I said, "I'm sorry to hear that, man." He says, "Yeah, he lived a good life anyway." "What about Pikaru?" He says, "Oh, Pikaru, he went to prison for, I don't know, I guess it was some sort of theft he committed. No one really understood the details in that. Even the CEO, he retired. Now I hear he's living in a condo somewhere down in the west part. Guess that's okay." I said, "Well, that's okay. I mean, some people turn out for the good, some for the worse, but I'm sorry to hear that some of them didn't turn out so good." He says, "Well, except for me, I'm still doing alright. I'm trying to get better at my life." And I said, "Well, okay, at least you're doing something good. What are you doing anyway? You never told me." He says, "Oh, right, I'm now working as a convenience store night clerk." And I said, "Well, okay." And he says, "It's kind of degrading, honestly. I never really expected to end up there. I used to be a vacuum cleaner salesman, but that didn't work out." I said, well, why not? That should have been up your alley. He says, well, no, actually, it reminded me too much of the old work and depressed me. And I said, well, do you ever think about going back to being a time sweeper? He says, there's not a day that goes by when I really want to be a time sweeper again, but I feel like I ended things on such a strong note that I really don't think that it would have been worth it to go back. What would the fans say? He says, well, I think the fans would be happy to see you again. I mean, just go easy on the difficulty. Have it more rewarding. He says, rewarding? How is difficulty rewarding? It should be given to the player. And I said, well, have it gradually build up and make the player actually feel accomplished when they win something, not relieved. He says, okay. I see where you're coming from, but still, I mean, the way my life is right now, I feel like it's just so-so. I mean, I'd like to go back, although sometimes I wish I knew how to go. And I said, well, try your best. I mean, have you tried doing something now? He says, I tried doing a couple of things with PlayStation, but they wouldn't accept me for my background. I said, yeah, that makes sense. He says, I tried talking to Senzaro about the new Sly Cooper game. I was hoping to be at least some kind of character in that. But no, they still rejected me there. And I said, well, why would you try to shoot for the moon? And he says, I don't know. But I can tell you one thing. Sometimes being forgotten really hurts. Sometimes when I walk down, people walk and mistake me for somebody else. And then they just turn around and say, oh, it's a talking cat. Ugh. And I said, well, sometimes when people want to be forgotten, they assume a new identity and try to work elsewhere. I mean, maybe you should quit your job. I mean, try doing something that actually makes you feel rewarded. And he says, like what? And I said, well, look around. I mean, have you tried going back to school? He says, nah, it's too much work and too much money. Besides, all the medals I've received in my time could not compare to the reward of being respected back in my day. And I said, okay, I wish you the best of luck with whatever you're doing. He says, thanks, I will. We parted ways after that, and never heard from him again. Come across a lot of strange things in my travels. Come across a lot of unusual people. So I tend to come across a lot of strange people in my travels. And that's the truth of the matter.